Hey everybody, welcome to our webinar on prioritizing what matters in vulnerability management. This is a little fireside chat that the team is running here at Upwind. My name's Ian Martin. I'm a sales engineer here. But for the next hour, we're going to be running a session for the practitioners by practitioners. Right? We are joined by two practitioners, John Sinteur, who is a security architect at Mendix, and Andy Borges, who's a security engineer at Madhive. And we're going to be talking about one of the most frustrating problems in security, which is vulnerability management. And so, let's face it. Nobody gets into security to be a CVE list manager, right? But that's where a lot of teams get stuck. Drowning in noise, chasing vulnerabilities that don't really matter, not knowing what's important and what's not. And so, if everything is critical, nothing is critical, right? And that lack of prioritization is where leadership starts to lose trust in the programs that you guys run. Our goal today is to sort of cut through that noise and look at how you guys can take a new approach, right, that's powered by runtime. And this is finally moving teams from sort of constant firefighting to actual risk reduction. Now, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys joining us. If you want to just say a word or two on sort of your guys' backgrounds and maybe the places that you guys work and your guys' experience with vulnerability management, that would be fantastic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Borges. I have been working in security around 25, 26 years now. I started as a pen tester and kind of moved around in different aspects of security, working at different companies, first as a consultant, and then doing, forensics to incident response. And in the last 10 years or so, it's been more focused around developer security and educating developers around how do we build secure software? How do we build systems that are resilient and just can face the challenges that we see today from a security landscape.
And
And I currently, I currently work with Madhive.
Go.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. John Sinteur, security architect at Mendix. Mendix is one of the premier low-code application platforms in the world, fully owned by Siemens. Been doing that for 5 years now. Before that, I co-founded and ran a pen testing company for 6, 7 years. One of the only companies in the Netherlands to end up in the minutes of the Dutch Senate because we were the only one to find a problem in the Corona app that this government created. So moved from the offensive side of security at Radically Open Security to Mendix, doing the defensive side now. We're fully owned by Siemens. We're working in full cooperation with them, but we're a bit of a leader there because we're cloud native, cloud first, cloud only, and they're trying to learn from us. So I'm not just doing Mendix that way. I'm doing more globally Siemens security as well in that sense.
Awesome. All right. With that, we'll jump right in. Right. So we're going to kind of break this out into two parts. Right. So first, we'll talk about a sort of a value-led discussion on like what's the state of the industry, and then like a little bit of a focused look at how Upwind has helped solve these problems in the real world for teams like Madhive and Mendix. Right. So as of, I think today's the 14th, as of 2 weeks ago, we're in 2026, and the biggest problem in security still seems like it's too many alerts and not enough sleep for practitioners. Right. So let's start at the root of the noise problem. So, and maybe Jeanette, this would be a good time to throw poll question number one up. But John, Andy, why do you guys think that so many teams are still drowning in CVEs? Right? Is it and perhaps more critically, like what's fundamentally wrong with the way that the industry still leans so heavily on static scores like CVSS to define criticality?
I mean, a lot of companies don't know what assets they have. One of the first questions I asked when I was onboarded by Mendix is, what's in our cloud? What assets do we have? Because if you don't know what you have, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to protect it in any sense or way? The business disruption, do you have maintenance windows or not? Is that formalized or not? The answers to your question are basically up in the poll, and as you will see with the results from the people in the webinar, that's joined across everybody. I mean, ownership is a good one as well. So we have you have a cloud resource, you have a vulnerability in it. Who owns it? Yeah, that guy left 2 weeks ago and he left the machine running. That doesn't work. I mean, asset management in that sense, it's vital, and a lot of companies don't have that in order yet.
I agree. I mean, there's also the lack of priority placed upon its position where it sits next to the edge, internal or like in the cloud, and its proximity to resources. I worked at a company that kind of pioneered this concept of attack path mapping, and using asset inventory is key in that, in assessing uh, risk from the edge and working your way back as an attack, thinking like an attacker, really helps you drive your vulnerability management systems from a prioritization, because you can actually see the path of somebody like an attacker would follow. And that has never really been brought to the forefront in that concept or in that way. And I think that also that the CVSS system as it stands today is based in a traditional, more not archaic, but just a previous generation of evaluation and on network systems, and how it is impactful to like uh, a cloud service running one application versus like a multi-tiered, multi-system Unix system that has been installed and running, is because that's kind of the mentality that where that was brought up from. So it's hard to address something that is being evaluated in this like in this different way uh, without the modern context. And so that's, I think, we're at this transition point where you know tools like Upwind are bringing more prioritization to the forefront, more context. At the same time, I hope as an industry we adapt and change just our evaluation on how these things are, you know, assessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, everything is online these days. I mean, we're cloud native, as I said, but that's a very recent development, a decade at most. If you go look before that, you can see it in modern cars as well. I mean, they're connected to everything these days. A car is basically a driving internet laptop. But if you look inside the car, nothing was built with internet in mind. I mean, look at the connector between your wireless tire inflation sensor and your motor management system. That's a wireless interface, and it's not
Hmm.
protected in any way, shape, or form because there was never an issue. But nowadays, your car is connected to the internet, so theoretically, everybody can hack that. It was designed with offline usage and it's used online. And you see that on a lot of things these days as well. Nothing is designed with online first in mind.
Yeah, I think there's new rules for pretty much everything in security, whether it's vulnerability management or it's like the scams that your grandparents have to potentially fend off, like when they get phone calls or text messages about like their Easy Pass having a $500 bill or something like that. And I think, yeah, that's a great insight, Andy. That like it CVSS score kind of feels like using a metric or a score, excuse me, or like a scoring system from like a different decade, because it was from a different decade and it wasn't designed for cloud first, right? I think it's a great data point, in terms of, it's relevant to know, but it shouldn't be the only thing that's driving your vulnerability management program, right? Um, I guess from your guys' perspective, like what's the real world cost in terms of like time and burnout and wasted effort in terms of like chasing all the criticals in your environment that maybe don't have that risk context of being exploitable, or something that's internet exposed, or any of the various things that you guys might want to prioritize based on like what does that do to your team in terms of like alert volume?
I think if you were to list the things that our developers do on a daily basis, there's at least a double-digit percentage of their time is spent on this kind of stuff. Which means that they can't spend time on developing features. They can't spend time on creating new stuff that our customers love. They need to spend time on maintaining on technology that they didn't ask for, they didn't design. Because usually maintenance of old code means taking care of things you did wrong in the past. And with a CVSS or a vulnerability in the library, that's not the case. That's a new one. It was a new one discovered. You didn't ask for it as a developer. And it takes time away from your main mind track and that's developing new stuff for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. Also, just the burnout and alert kind of onslaught of alerts that all say, critical or high, or uh, they're not necessarily even relevant, but they're treated as like a critical alert, like as if uh, like there was a service outage or something to that effect, and they don't match. That's the problem.
Right. Right.
A criticality in security doesn't necessarily mean the same criticality in like operations or even development. So, and
Great
that's
insight.
the like a huge gap, I believe. Like,
A
uh,
critical vulnerability in a running library means nothing to a developer. Hey, the application runs, it works, it does what it's supposed to do. Why are you bothering me? And that's understandable, but they still have to fix it.
yeah, and I mean, in reality, is it vulnerable? Do they have the facilities or the knowledge needed to discern or extrapolate like this is an actual vulnerability, this is critical to our environment, not just a critical in some arbitrary nebulous way that somebody has because it's a network accessible thing and yada yada, all of those CVSS determinations. Um, doesn't necessarily make it relevant to a developer or a team. And that's the real problem is that there's no actionable thing. If I can't prioritize the work, um, then why even bother? Like
Yeah.
if I don't know what is like the highest risk that this will actually lead to a compromise, I should probably fix it versus something that is, it's a thing that could possibly or potentially lead to a risk or uh, chain upon other risks, and then your snowball starts. But all of
Yeah,
these things, this is just wastes time, effort, and like money in the end of the day, not delivering features, not delivering value back to the customer. So in my mind, it's more about having that context, that awareness, the actionable intelligence to say, oh, this is a actual risk. I can see it. It's something that I need to mitigate, and I can do this by patching or doing some other protection measure. That's not very clear, and that's just like time wasted over and over and over again, and
Yeah.
it hasn't ever become clear to a developer, and without formal education or just awareness.
Yeah,
So
and it
Makes
helps.
sense.
It helps if you have the tooling to show the developer that this particular vulnerability, there's an exploit out there. Here's the command line to run it, and we have an exposed system because there it is. So yeah, really, you need to fix this right now instead of putting it in the next sprint.
Yeah. And John, that actually makes me think of a thing that John had talked about when we were doing kind of the prep for this webinar, which was that like in addition to all of the it's busy and that it can be difficult and nobody likes dealing with too many alerts, it's also that like you're also missing stuff that does matter by going after things that don't matter, right? So like I think of like the Equifax breach that happened in 2017, right? Like so the vulnerability was known and there was a patch that was available for 2 months, but it wasn't acted on. And in my brain, the assumption of why it isn't acted on is probably because they were chasing down a bunch of like no context vulnerabilities that didn't really make a huge difference in their environment, right? So like most breaches don't happen because something was unknown. It happens because it was known and it wasn't acted on. And that was like a $1.4 billion
Yeah, and
failure.
I'm pretty sure the Equifax team was not sitting on their hands during those 2 months. They were working hard on vulnerabilities, just not this
Yeah,
one.
exactly. Exactly. So yeah, all right, that brings us to sort of our next point, which is that like the shift from knowing that it exists and knowing that it matters is sort of the new security mandate. So like turning it from how dangerous is it to how dangerous is it for you. And so we see a lot of the time that the conversation's moving away from CVSS to a combination of sort of CVSS exploitability and context. So do you guys like why is context, specifically the sort of runtime context and app level reachability and internet exposure so important? And sort of how should teams actually define a critical vulnerability in, modern dynamic cloud environments? I'm going to start picking people to answer the question so you guys don't have to do the hand thing. So Andy, you go first. Uh,
Yeah, I think that the amount of the torrent of vulnerabilities that are flooded in makes it very hard to see through the noise in terms of just this vast set of fixes that potentially could break your software or could just mean different time wasted trying to repair something. So having a tangible, actionable thing to put in front of a developer to say, like, if you do this, it will protect you from that. And being able to uh, have examples or show them um, in a way that is, meaningful, I think actually makes it easier for them to grasp, easier for them to prioritize, and in the end of the day, those metrics really solidify like what we're trying to accomplish here, which is protection at the end of our systems across the board. And you're only as weak as the weakest link, so to speak. And
yeah.
if you don't take care of that, then you will have maybe the strongest system in the world, but just because you missed one little thing that may be insignificant to somebody, but without that context, it could blow up the entire region or your
Achilles heel.
environment.
Yeah, an important change in mindset is there that you're not doing vulnerability management anymore. You're doing risk management. Because a vulnerability is a risk for you or it's not. And there are gray shades of gray between those two, but that's basically different from you have a vulnerability or you don't.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, yeah, I think doing it thinking about it that way moves the sort of needle from thinking about vulnerability management as sort of like a compliance checkbox to like a measure of business impact for your company, right? So
Yeah,
the idea with CVSS is okay, John.
if you're doing things from a compliance point of view, you're doing it the wrong way. If you look at mendix.com/trust, you see the certifications that we have. We have FedRAMP, PCI DSS, ISO 2701, a lot of them. And a colleague of me did the math a couple of months ago. He counted the number of controls you had to need to comply to match all the certifications, and it was something like 2,800 or something. That's not doable. You can't do compliance-based security right. You have to do things secure by design, and the compliance is a result of it, and not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's important. Compliance isn't the same thing as security, right? And especially in modern cloud environments, the various frameworks, the SOC 2 and the HIPAA and the ISO and all that kind of stuff are obviously sort of great jumping off points. But in our experience, like it might take 5 years for SOC 2 to push out an update, or 3 years for ISO to push out an update to revisions of those frameworks. But cloud security moves like big, fast, and scary. Like new attacks are coming like every couple days. I know from just following our threat feed on top of other folks' threat feed. There's like
Yeah,
some new world-ending CV like every second or third day at this point. And if you have that stuff in your environment and internet exposed, right, then you might have a long day if that stuff is in your environment 2 days after the CVE pops.
yeah, and you have to move to a more mature situation right now because the compliancy pressure is going to increase. We have the Cyber Resilience Act, the DORA
Yep.
laws that are coming, all those new regulations that are going to come into effect are going to add to the pressure for compliance, which is the wrong way to look at it. You need to be secure, and then you're compliant by as a result, not the other way around. But if you let the outside pressure from the regulators drive your security program, you're going to be in a lot of pain.
That's
And nobody has
another.
infinite resources for handling all of this stuff either. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to what John was saying, which is a lot of these compliance frameworks and bodies that govern it are comprised of like either accounting firms or non-specialized technical people.
Or
They
politicians,
they
even worse.
are, well, I mean, traditionally, this is the kind of thing that like 20 years ago and things that I've experienced. So I'm sure it's shifted, but I'm 100 years old, so you have to really, bear with me here. But you know, having people that are looking at a problem with a different set of lenses is part of the entire issue, which is I'm looking at it from a financial standpoint of how to protect my asset, not from a technical standpoint or a technological protection standpoint. And those regulations and all of those compliance things are just that. They're just like good guidance, but they shouldn't drive anything. They're there to just validate your work and saying, yes, I am doing this. I know this. And by it, an after effect is that it's compliant across the board. And that could be your meter stick of achieving that or not.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In terms of the way that you guys handle sort of that pressure from compliance, like if you kind of have to do the juggling act between like theoretical risk and operational reality inside your guys' environment, like what's a better framework for prioritization in your opinions that will still align with like real business impact?
Operational all the way. I mean, when I have a chat with auditors, which happens a couple times a year, if you have all these certifications, it's always here's how we're doing things, here's how we do things in reality, here's the practice in our situation, and ask me any questions you want based on whether it meets your framework or not. That's basically the discussion I have, and we always pass those exams, if you want to call them that. So practice first all the time.
I find that also these uh, exams, I guess, as you were saying, are the assessment isn't like a pass or fail. It's are you approaching this holistically from a security point of view? And are you addressing these issues as they come up? And that's really what they're after is not like, oh, did you patch X, Y, or Z?
Not
And
100% compliance rate.
right. And you have to have the plan in place. You have to have an understanding of where to address this risk. And that's what they're really after, I believe. Like, it's not so much that did you pass, did you sign this, did you do whatever. It's more about like, yeah, I've got things come in, I address them, I assess them correctly, and then I mitigate them in a timely fashion. And that time could be months, days, weeks, whatever, but I'm doing something about it. And it's an ever flow, an ebb and flow of it. So, like, to me, um, that's the conversation I have with
Yep.
auditors is more about that. And then rather than having a technical one, because I don't think they even care, to be honest. They look at the letter of the law and they interpret it in certain ways, and there to help them interpret it in a different, maybe in a different light, but it still addresses the answer that they're looking for.
I'm
Yeah,
stealing
and
your
those are
line
the
about
best
accountants,
conversations.
by the way, Andy.
Those are the best conversations to have with an auditor because they see a lot of other companies doing similar stuff. So if you're missing something, they can tell you. So use those conversations with an auditor in your advantage that way.
Love that. Yeah. All right. So, if we're being honest, a lot of the time, for a lot of the folks that we talk to, especially sort of on the initial introduction, most vulnerability management programs have a tendency to look a lot more like list management than actual risk reduction. But we'll sort of end this half of the webinar, I guess, with like a look forward. So John, Andy, if you guys could rebuild a vulnerability management program from scratch, right? Like today, what's one thing that it absolutely must have, or that you would like it to have as a must have? And what's one thing that you guys would actually remove? And do you guys have any tactical advice for teams that are trying to move from that sort of like list management mindset to actual measurable risk reduction?
I'm gonna shoot it in from a different angle. I think the main task of a security team is to make the lives of the developers as easy as possible. I mean, if you already take a multiple digit percentage of time of their away from their development work to fix shit, make that fix as easy as possible. That can be in many different ways, in the sense that make sure that they don't have to go to a different dashboard to find out what's vulnerable at all. Give them an automated Jira ticket, give them a Slack message, but only give them a Slack message of things that actually matter to them. And if you have an environment where you have a couple of hundred developers like we do, I mean, there's maybe one or two in there that can fix something. Make sure that your automated tools find those two persons and get them the information they need to do their work efficiently.
Mhm.
Your job as a security team is to make their life easy. If you do that, they'll walk through fires for you as well because they know that you've got their back. So anything you do in a pure program, whether it's vulnerability management, whether it's Sec DevOps, anything you name it, if that's your core goal, you're in for a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I just like echo that sentiment, which is to I'm an enabler. I'm trying to enable developers to deliver quicker and more resilient, more secure software. And a measure of that quality of software is security. So, leaning in on those metrics and those types of things, like that kind of drives me. So, meaning instead of throwing things over the fence that are like simple fixes or things that could be just thrown to them and I have a ticket and I just walk away from it. I'd rather give them an automation or give them a fix that props up their ability to just have an automated fix that or automated builds, let's say, that patches everything upon deployment
Yeah.
universally. And they don't have to think about it. It's also services my needs because it drives down the number of vulnerabilities and things like that. But at the same time, it's more about I'm not a cop, I'm not a guard, I'm a enabler, and that's the way that I see this position is like I'm a person that is trying to help people understand something that could be nebulous, could be very archaic or esoteric, so that they don't have to worry about that. Like I can worry about all these other technical things, and they just want the fix. They just want to get on with their day, and
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
I want them to do.
Yeah, and another thing is explain to the business why the security matters to the business itself. And let me illustrate that with an example from Mendix. Mendix, our customers create low-code apps which they deploy in our cloud mostly. And one of the things we track is the time to first app, which means the time that people they start with downloading the development environment we call Studio Pro, and they start developing and designing their first app. The time it takes them to get their first app up and running is something we track. And as weird as it sounds, security is part of that because the security team at a customer will look at a low-code app and ask a developer, okay, how secure is that cloud that from Mendix that you're talking about? And they start
Mhm.
evaluating our security posture. They start evaluating our SOC 2 report and stuff like that. So making security a key issue there and make sure that customers see immediately, yeah, these guys know their shit. That decreases the time to first app, which we track, which increases the business revenue. So every company has something like that you can use to explain to your top management why security is important for the business.
Yeah.
That's a key factor there.
Yeah. Make security something that can help DevOps to continue to move fast instead of slowing them down. I think like the way Andy said it was really good about being an enabler, not a blocker
Yeah.
from security. Um, Okay, that makes sense. So now, let's talk about we've sort of talked a bunch about like how vulnerability management is broken because it's lacking context, right? So let's talk about how to fix it, right? So we've mentioned the need for sort of a runtime first approach. One that the focus is sort of on context around exploitability and reachability, and whether packages are active, and even whether vulnerable functions are being called. For both of you guys, you've both gone through this shift, but John, your team maybe went through this shift more recently. Can you walk us through what that actually felt like, and specifically like how did Upwind help you guys to reduce the noise in the vuln management workflow for Mendix?
I think one interesting way of using an actual example was Shai Ulut that happened in September, where a maintainer for a couple of NPM packages was phished and lost control over his packages in the NPM ecosphere. And that happened, of course, on an evening, at least in our time zone,
Hmm.
at something like 6:15 in the evening. And at 7:15, one of our security people read the news and saw the message that he was exploited. 5 minutes later, he knew that we were not exploitable because we used the Upwind and runtime agents to see, did we have those packages? Are they running? Are they active? Are they downloaded at all? And we knew that we were not vulnerable. Those 5 minutes that, if I compare that to the time we took for Log4j, is a massive improvement.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, I love that example. Um, Andy, how about you guys?
I mean, I feel that having tangible information to go to a team and or a your stakeholders and say, yes, we are, or we aren't, and here's the proof, really helps drive confidence in your, for your team, and uh, having the ability to say with some level of confidence that this isn't something that we should be worried about. And
Hmm.
at the rate of it being alerted to being validated to actually being a risk, like value, to a risk to action upon, is in minutes, versus something like, I've worked at big businesses that it takes 3 months to go through every system beforehand to really, because you didn't trust anything and you had to reevaluate them and double down and check and make sure that this is actually being called or whatever the case may be, which is just an inordinate waste of time. Like
And
it,
if you have that trust problem, like everybody has to run those same sets of tests over and over and
yeah,
over again, so that the same thing gets validated 10 different times by 10 different teams.
it's basically there's no trust in any of the protections that you put in place. That's really what is demonstrating is
Right.
that all of these tooling beforehand, whatever they may be, I had no confidence in because they really didn't tell me what was actually happening. That more after the fact, or it was the alert noise was so loud that for me to actually action upon the things that mattered, I'd have to dig through so many alerts that it would take more time than necessary. And so a product like Upwind really helps that, like accelerate. Just I'm a small team. I but I've worked in larger organizations and things. But no matter what, at what scale, this type of tooling really gives you the advantage in terms of just with confidence saying that, yes, this is something we should worry about. This is not something we should worry about and move on.
I love that. Yeah, and I think one of the things that as somebody who works at Upwind and maybe a biased person, of course, I love the fact that we do all of that in like an automated way, so that you guys don't have to set up 5, 6 tiers worth of these rules, right? Like there's just the deployment method, and once it's actually up and running, then you guys don't have to say check for internet exploitability, check for EPSS scores, et cetera, et cetera. All of that's just automatically filtered through. And yeah, I think if dev and security aren't communicating well, you don't have like a vulnerability problem. There's like a trust problem, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I
And
guess
then
the final.
you get
Okay,
back
Jed.
you get back to my earlier comment that the security team is there to make their life easier.
Yeah,
And if
exactly.
there's a trust problem, you're toast. You're gonna lose.
It's a marriage at the end of the day. If the trust is gone, right? Like things are bad. The final mile there, right, is getting the fix deployed. So, for you guys, how is the visibility that you guys are getting out of Upwind, like helping you to communicate better with development teams? Did they trust the findings more? And on the remediation side, like what are some examples of using root cause analysis? So like being able to trace a vuln back to a specific code commit or developer, helping to speed up your remediation times.
I think that's vital. I mean, if you are in the habit of just deploying a Debian image to a virtual machine in the cloud, you're going to get a lot of libraries in there that you're not using. So you're going to get a lot of alerts about stuff that doesn't matter. So starting out with hardened images is one way of doing it, but then you still have to look at runtime, what's actually happening there. I mean, decrease the amount of stuff that's there. Hell yeah, of course. But saying I've got an S-bomb from a supplier and that's what I'm running is wrong too, because you got version drift in there as well. So having a view of runtime and then getting back to where the problem came from is vital, because if it came from a vulnerable image, if it came from the Debian image, who's going to fix that for you? If it came from your own developers, yeah, that's easy. But finding out the difference between those two is wasting time. If you have tooling that automates that and can tell you exactly it comes from there, whether it's a Terraform script, whether it's a source code, whether it's an image that you got from a supplier, knowing where to fix it is vital. If you don't know where to fix it and have to chase that, if you have to chase the developer team that can do it, you're in for a world of hurt.
I'm gonna use my old guy example is that like I had to go to PT because I had knee pain at some point. Like and like I had done a bunch of stuff that I had looked up. This was before ChatGPT, because I'm old like Andy is. I'm 90 years old if he's 100 years old. But like I had done a bunch of stuff for like knee pain that I had Googled, right? And it didn't help anything. And then I spent the first 4 weeks in PT just doing different things that the therapist suggested to figure out like where the pain got better or where it got worse based on the things that he did. And that took a couple of weeks. And then once he identified what the problem was, he was able to give me 5 exercises to do every day. And within 2 weeks, like knee pain that had bothered me for a year cleared up, right? Like, so if you can do that, like quick triage or intelligent sort of like root cause analysis, that really does cut down on like the remediation time in knee pain and also in vulnerability management. Andy, I see you have an idea here.
Yeah, well, I mean, to both of your point, it also drives other types of innovation, meaning like using containerized systems that are using like distroless or just like libc or a libc runtime, and that's it.
Hmm.
So basically minimizing your threat threshold, but at the same time, probably increasing productivity or performance, and the things that you have to worry about and not worry about is diminished. But that's all driven from like this ability or this understanding that like I have too many vulnerabilities. I just need to get out of it. And
Right.
that's kind of like one solution to the problem. Um, and not knowing where these things are is kind of maddening as well. And if you don't have that clarity, it becomes like a lose-lose proposition that you can't ever get out of without context, without having actionable things from it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Guess when you guys talk about metrics in your environment, sort of how you track this, I think we mentioned SLAs in the poll question a little bit earlier. Like, we tend to think that we have to move away from like these vanity metrics, like total number of vulnerabilities or scan coverage or just critical vulnerabilities in the environment, and instead the focus should be on things like mean time to remediate. Bam! Here comes the poll. Mean time to remediate by risk tier or risk reduction over time. Do you guys find that like communicating those metrics builds more trust with leadership and with engineering because you're proving that you've actually like reduced risk instead of just giving them a ever growing number of vulnerabilities in the environment?
Yeah, reduced risk is indeed the measure and the thing you want to communicate. And getting things done within SLA times is a part of that. Total
Hmm.
number of vulnerabilities is totally meaningless. I mean, if you take our platform again, we have thousands of low-code apps running in there. They're basically all identical. If there's a vulnerability discovered in our runtime, which can happen, I mean, it's just software, then you have thousands of vulnerabilities in your hit counter on day one. And that's meaningless because it's one library that you can easily fix in one line of code. I mean, number of vulnerabilities is so totally meaningless, I don't even want to know about it anymore.
yeah, I'm revamping our metrics currently at at this current state, and I've determined or at least thought of the best way is to track the residual reduction and or increase of uh, global vulnerabilities in a site or a repo or a package, meaning I'm only really caring about over a course of time that is going down or that is maintaining and not skyrocketing up. Um, those are good leading indicators. And again, I'm not using that as like your pass or fail. These are, oh, this team needs more help to automate and or fix these things in an automated fashion or
Right.
introduce more headcount or whatever the case may be needed to drive that in a downward fashion. So, but the vulnerabilities themselves to me is pointless, especially because they're all critical and they're all like blood red when you show up on a screen, and it's just numbing to anybody that would ever look at it.
Yeah.
There's no way of actually like getting out of that like vortex.
The only
Mhm.
interesting number of vulnerabilities that's actually useful is the number of reopened vulnerabilities. Because if something was reported closed and it reopens, then
Right.
there's something wrong in either your development process or the communication with your dev team. And that it's not the vulnerability that you need to fix in that case, but the
It's the
communication that went
process.
wrong.
Yeah.
Process
Yep.
was wrong.
That makes sense. Um, All right. Yeah, I think this has been a great conversation. I think we're running up on the time that we have pre-planned for this thing. So I guess the core takeaway from me is that security confidence doesn't come from the size of your vulnerability list, but like it comes from the clarity that you get from prioritization. You have to fix all the things, but the risk-based approach ensures that you're fixing the right things first and faster, right? I guess for both of you guys, as sort of an exiting question in one sentence each, how has moving to like a runtime based exploitability focused vulnerability management program helped you guys to close the gap between your security plans and your production reality?
I can now say with confidence that we know what's happening in runtime.
Ditto. I mean, it's something that is kind of eluded various teams for a long periods of time, and then there's been point solutions that have like closed that gap, but in different non-meaningful ways. This, I believe, is the a better approach that is more impactful, is trackable, is something that you can go to your stakeholder and say, like, yes, we don't have a risk with confidence.
Yeah,
And without a bunch of work beforehand and like me combing every nook and cranny to make sure that that is accurate, this provides that with some level of confidence, which I think, for a small team, especially, really accelerates your time to hero status.
awesome. Um, All right, guys. Thank you both, John and Andy, for such an insightful discussion. For everybody who's watched, if you're tired of drowning in CVE noise and you want to see how Upwind can help your team to reduce the vulnerability noise in your environment by something like 95%, you can find a demo link on the website. Maybe we might even put one in the chat. Thanks for taking the time and sitting with John and Andy and myself today. We really appreciate you.